Hey everyone, my guest today is the actress Julie Halston. Julie was the recipient of the 2021 Isabelle Stevenson Tony Award. Her Broadway credits are numerous and they include Tootsie, Hairspray, Gypsy, Anything Goes, and the 20th Century, and most recently, Our Town. Miss Halston was a founding member of Charles Busch's legendary theater company and co-starred with Mr. Busch in many, many productions. In addition, Julie can be seen in Gossip Girl, The Good Fight, Almost Family, and Divorce. She reprised her role of Bitsy Von Muffling from Sex and the City, most recently in the reboot And Just Like That. Some of her many films include Addams Family Values, Chosen Family, Intermedium, many, many more. And her wonderful web series, Virtual Halston, was a pandemic hit with over 40 YouTube episodes. Go watch that. Welcome the beloved, legendary Julie Halston to my podcast. This has been a long time coming.
A long time, many years actually. I mean, we have been in similar circles for years.
Yes.
And I know your podcast. I've heard people on your podcast that are friends of ours. And yeah, it's a long time coming. And we always see each other at the theater or at a reading or, you know, and gosh, I think last saw you on stage in Richard Greenberg's, was it Perplexed?
The Perplexed, which was one of the shows. Broadway closed down March 20th,
Well,
20,
20th? Yeah.
20th of March 12th of 2020.
Yes, yes,
Um, and and our opening was one of the last openings. Um, Terrence McNally was there,
yes,
Rich, obviously, but people we have lost since.
yes.
I was thinking about, Terrence McNally passed away very shortly after he saw my show, and someone said, yeah, that was the last play that he saw. And I thought,
Oh,
what an astonishing thing.
yeah,
Because he was just such a hero of mine.
sure.
Um, Julie, we were talking a little bit before I hit record because we are approaching the Tony Awards, which
Yes,
means A, it must bring up memories for you of
yes.
winning and receiving a Tony. And we were kind of sharing about growing up, you in Long Island and me in New Jersey, what it was if you didn't grow up in Manhattan to
Right.
come to see theater. And now you're a Tony voter and you go every night. And it's like, not only are you in seeing show you're like such a foundational member of this community. So I want to just go back a little bit because I want to understand growing up where you did, how you did, Catholic school, a wonderful, colorful mother who you've referenced in many
Yes,
interviews.
yes.
Um, a little bit of like your relationship to theater as a younger person,
Mhm.
and then I have so many Charles Busch questions, but let's just start there if you don't mind. Who was in
Oh, I
your
love
home
it.
growing up?
Well, okay. So born in Flushing, Queens, uh, parents moved out to Comac, Long Island. Uh, and I grew up rather lower middle class. My parents kind of clawed their way into the middle class. However, I was just talking to one of my old neighbors just today, and it was a very, it was in many ways a lovely way to grow up. We all knew each other. We were all out, you know, playing kickball in the street, and it was a time when there were not helicopter moms. We know that term now, helicopter moms who were just, we were out in doing our thing on our bikes. It was a very lovely way to grow up in many ways. But my mom, she loved the arts. And I found this out later in life, but my parents were both very good dancers. And we always used to watch them dance at weddings and, events. And my mom actually kind of wanted to be a ballroom dancer.
Huh.
What? You know,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
we found this out like later, and she really tried to get my dad on the sort of ballroom circuit. And he was just like, no, let's just enjoy dancing. But she loved the arts. And I think at times she was a rather bored housewife. She had ideas, she had
Right.
some notions.
Right.
And when she could, she would sort of drag her three little girls Mary, Julie, and Caroline, um, to art museums, movies, the theater. And I remember I was about 7 years old, and she also bought um, albums, cast albums. We had Funny Girl on, we had Hello Dolly, we had West Side Story. We became infatuated with West Side Story. I mean, obsessed.
Right.
And we went to the theater. I mean, my mother, I think my sister Mary Beth was 4. But my mother was like, we're going to West Side Story. And we all were entranced. My other 2 sisters loved the movie, they loved the soundtrack. I was transformed.
Right.
That was it. And there's always one person in a family that it it touches them. It's in their DNA now. Their DNA is forever changed. And that was me. I was like, I don't know how to get here. I don't know what to do, but I am going to be an actress. And my mother did encourage it. Again, I had no idea how to do it. And I was really kind of late to the game. I went to Hofstra University, also on Long Island, and I was a performance art major. But again, Alana, I really didn't know what I was doing. I sort of went to college to, like, I don't know, get a boyfriend, have social life. I wasn't
Get
very
it. Were you living at home or did you live on campus?
well. This is the other thing. The first year I was a commuter, but I did make a lot of friends, and I actually lived in the dorms illegally.
They're going to come bill you now.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Now, I wasn't there all the time, but what I would do is, I had a lot of friends, and they would say, "Oh, you could stay with me tonight," whatever. And I would just sort of go from Tower A to Tower B to Tower C. Eventually, I guess it was like after freshman year or maybe the middle of sophomore year, I actually did move off campus. Um, so, but it was a crazy time. And I didn't really do much in college, except by junior year, I somehow kind of found my way. And suddenly I was starting to be cast in things and whatnot. And, but really, I was a very untethered person for a long time. And I never quite knew what I was doing. Like, I remember coming to New York and going to a few auditions, and I'll never forget this. There was an actress, and I don't even know whatever happened to her, but her resume photo was by Francesco Scavullo. I mean, now
What?
people cannot know who that is, but he was one of the big Vogue photographers, and I was like, what? What is happening?
Right.
Like, I I had a friend take my photos. It was sad. It was sad what happened. I mean,
Well, it was actually normal what happened
yeah,
to you because
yeah,
having like, the equivalent of whoever is photographing Gigi Hadid today
right.
in your headshot is an unusual thing. But even knowing like were you looking at backstage? Like how were you even finding out about those things?
Yes, I was going to backstage, and then there was another one. I think it was show business or something. But I mean, I just was very
Yeah,
like I said, untethered, unplanned, and I, I got into AFTRA. I did do a commercial for Solo detergent cleans as well as conditions, and that was my big AFTRA moment. Um, but I really didn't know what I was doing. I'm not joking. And
right.
I was studying at the Terry Schreiber studio, and Terry was a very good teacher. They had very good teachers there. But I thought I was going, I'm not joking, Alana. I thought I should be playing Hedda Gabler. I have a New York accent. I'm from Comac, Long Island, but somehow Strindberg and Ibsen, I remember making Nathan Lane laugh very hard. I told him that I thought should be in The Wild Duck. And he just started screaming. Um, my
By the way,
Yes.
by the way, in the world of taking classic texts and figuring out how to make them more accessible or modern. The
Yes.
idea today of
Yeah.
you playing any of these
Yes.
well-known characters that are in the canon of sort of theater as we thought of it. Um,
Yes.
I have so many. I wish I had a checkbook right now because yes to all of those things. With the Long Island accent, like I see that I mean, actually, yes. And our
Honey,
idea
you could direct it. We'll go to BAM.
will do it because honestly, that idea of only certain people can do certain things
Right.
has kept so many people out of roles that would allow them to shine and allow the story to be told in a much more accessible way. Anyway, sidebar, we can have coffee. We'll go back to the newly opened West Bank Cafe
There you go.
and
That's
we'll talk about it. But anyway, but yes, just feeling like an idea of what we should be, and then there's how people see us, and
right.
also like to your point, not knowing anything. Like I
Well,
know nothing.
no, no,
Yeah,
nothing. But here's the thing. It was Terry Schreiber who said, because he asked us once to do sort of an improv on an event that happened to you in
right.
your life. And I did an event about my trying to track down the Beatles because I was Beatle obsessed. Still am, really. Uh,
Yes.
and it was very funny, and the class was really howling. And after the class, Terry Schreiber said to me, Julie, I know you would love to be a great dramatic actress, and I think you could do whatever you want to do. You are naturally funny, and I really think you should pursue some comedic situations. And he said, I also think you should write.
Mm.
And I had never really thought that.
Huh.
Two, cut two, and this is a good transition. I ended up, we had a mutual friend. I ended up going to San Francisco in the early 1980s. Who was there but Charles Busch? He was doing his one-man show. I was there sort of putting together an act, a comedy act. Wasn't funny, but I dressed nicely. And I was very chic. Anyway, we ended up meeting and we didn't really like each other very much. I thought he was rather cold and aloof, and he just thought I was nuts. And he didn't not very talented. And anyway, he got back to New York and he wanted to do his one-man show in New York. Well, he couldn't get an audience. These were the days when, people were doing things in garages and,
Yeah.
all
I
kinds
just
of,
had Eric Bogosian on, and he was really describing it was an art gallery, it was a candy store, it was
yeah,
a
that's
jazz
right.
band, it was
It
a
was a
show.
bookie joint.
Yes.
It was a bookie joint.
Yes.
I mean, so he was doing this one-man show. He couldn't get an audience. And he called everyone he knew. And he actually did call me. And he said, you know, I'll give you free tickets, if you bring your friends or whatever. And as I say, and I've said this a number of times, well, I might have been untalented, but I was very popular. I had
Yeah.
a lot of friends, and I would bring all my friends to his show, and he loved it, of course. I fell in love with his show.
Mm-hmm.
It was called Alone with a Cast of Thousands, and he played men and women, and he didn't he was not in drag the way we had later come to see him. He would have a prop, like a hat or a feather boa or just a pen, and he played men and women and older characters, young characters. I was entranced. I
Right.
was just entranced. And I was just like, I don't know what this guy is all about, but I'm sort of getting on that train because I am going to follow this guy because I really like his work. And then he wrote a skit called Vampire Lesbians of Sodom. And his own sister turned him down. She wouldn't even be his co-star. He couldn't get anyone to be his co-star. He finally called me up. Long story short, I was terrible, but I got into this company of crazy people that were sort of putting on this show, and I was not good. And as we rehearsed, I got worse and worse. And I could tell that they were all freaking out. And I did say to them, and I did truly say this. I said, look, guys, I know I stink, but you put a wig on me in front of 60 gay men, and I am going to glow. And that is exactly what happened. We went to this club called 8BC, and just like what you was talking about, it was like a drug den, basically. It was really like narrow. It was probably the size of this screen.
Zoom screen.
And it was a huge hit,
Huh.
huge hit. And the next thing you know, Charles was writing material for me. And he was the one, he and Ken Elliott, who was our director, they were the one who really encouraged me to go there. Don't try to soften yourself. Let yourself be big. Let
Mhm.
yourself have these grand feelings. You know, don't get rid of your accent. Your accent is funny. It's good. You know, and I watched a lot of old movies and I watched everything that Eve Arden ever did. Charles said, this is, want you to
Look at this. Right.
look at this, look at this, look at this. Not that I had
Yeah.
known those movies. I knew those movies, but I rewatched them.
Right.
And when you have someone who's writing for you, and we really had a collaboration. So like he would say, how would you do this? And then he would give me suggestions. And then we would sit and talk for a while and I would tell him stories about what my mother would say. And my mother always had funny things to say. And he would say, oh my God, I want you to talk about that more and more. So it was a lovely collaboration. And again, certainly not for money, Alana. I mean, certainly not for fame and fortune. This was just having fun on a weekend.
Well, I read somewhere or I listened because I was watching all of these interviews with you and Charles and just to get to know you as a couple, as an
Right,
artistic
right,
couple.
right.
And at one point, he described you as a demented talk show host. That was
Yes.
sort of the vibe that you gave. And I thought, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I used to do that with people. Like I would meet new people, and Charles is actually quite a shy guy in many ways, and I am not shy. And I would meet new people, and I'd say, "What should we know about you? Tell me your patterns. Who do you sleep with? What's going on? What
Right,
do you have to say about the world?" And
right.
would be sitting there going, she's asking these things. And of course, what's a riot is that even when you're a demented talk show host, people would tell me.
Of course.
They would tell me, they'd say, well, I'm from Manitoba, or, and I was like, where is
And
that?
off we
Like,
go.
what's Manitoba? And Charles loved that character so much, though, that he would write those kinds of
Right.
characters for me. And that's what Pat Pilford really was in Red Scare on Sunset. During the McCarthy era, because it's about the McCarthy era, she was a red baiting talk show host.
Mm.
And it was taken directly from the kind of way I presented myself. And I learned so much from being in that company, the Theater in Limbo company. I learned really, when you're doing comedy every night, you really learn. And you learn when uh, the lines should not be broken up. You learn, and Charles writes very long sentences. That's another
Right.
thing. You have to learn how to take a breath and get the whole sentence out. He actually has a lot of run-on sentences, but they're very funny and they always have a punchline. You have to learn how to talk fast. I mean, this is just technique stuff.
Right.
And learning how to talk fast allowed me to learn how to do Kaufman and Hart. Because you know what? You got to talk fast in Kaufman and Hart. If you're going to do, his girl Friday, you got to know that rhythm. You got to do it. You cannot
Yes.
slow. And that's vaudeville rhythms. That's those old rhythms from the 30s and 40s, film noir films or whatever. It's like, hey, you just got out of the clink. And don't, no chin music with me, kid. I mean, it's all that kind of stuff. And it was through Jim Carnahan and the Roundabout Theater or whatever, because they used to do revivals, that I was able to take what I learned from Charles and apply it to classic plays from that
Right.
era. And I'll tell you, it's really something I hope that they are teaching that kind of technique in schools today.
Well,
Because
that was your grad school. I
yes,
mean, you did your 10,000 hours and more. Um, but that's, so often when I talk to people, lucky break can mean so many things, and it takes many, many of them
yes,
uh to kind of land in a place where you're like, I can do just this. There may
right.
be quieter times, but I can say I'm an actor and this is what I do. But you were saying earlier to me, you mentioned Wall Street. So what was your day job, or what were your early jobs while you're doing this unbelievable work? And really, like, I mean, Charles Busch and his legacy
Right.
is, it may not be known to everybody, but it is like, to the people who know and understand what they created as an
Yeah.
art form, and all that has followed because of that. And it coming at a time, AIDS is ravaging,
Oh,
an entire community, and he is writing this extraordinary, hilarious, truthful, holding up a mirror and also allowing people to laugh at a time where that was so necessary,
oh,
right?
I'm so glad you brought this up because,
Yes.
you know, it was very painful. First of all, we lost members in our own company, and it was just terrible and devastating,
Tragic. Yeah.
tragic. But I'm so glad you brought it up because so often we would have whole groups of AIDS patients in our audience. GMHC would literally have a whole group of, and it brought so much joy to really so many people who needed to laugh, who needed to heal in any way they can. And this is before the cocktail came about. And, people really were suffering, really
Right, with
terribly.
no hope and no
No hope.
possibility,
No.
and to be in community
Yes.
with each other, and to have you guys performing and being hilarious, as people listening now have already heard you be in this friggin' 10 minutes. Um, where did Julie Halston and Wall
Oh,
Street
Wall
meet?
Street. Okay. Well, like we know in this profession, you know, um, I needed to work, and I kind of put myself through Hofstra University. I had a scholarship, um, and I also put myself through a work study program, and I worked in the library at Hofstra University. I became very, very um, cognizant of the Dewey Decimal System, and then there was the Library of Congress system. They changed the system, and mm, anyway, um, I
But
was
there was a time you were the go-to
I
for
was
the
about to.
Dewey.
I was quite good, actually. Actually, I was very good, and I am still to this day quite a good researcher. Um,
Okay,
so
noted.
I can go down a rabbit hole quickly on the internet. But anyway, so I didn't know what to do after college. You know, I was like, oh, what am I going to do? Well, I got a job. Well, I first had a job with like a marketing firm. I just worked there like part-time. But then I really needed a full-time job because I had been married and my marriage ended. I was
You were married in
I
college?
was I married my college sweetheart right after college. I was really a child bride. I was like 21 or years old or so, whatever. And
The
we
court signed special papers to allow marriage
exactly.
for someone your
Uh,
young age.
it
Yes.
was kind of crazy. Um, But however, I did get a wonderful name because my name was Julie Halston, and that was his name. It's a
What
wonderful
was your
name.
name growing up?
My name growing up was Julie Lynn Abatelli. Do I look like Ada Totoro? No,
No.
never have been put on The Sopranos. I
Yeah.
look more like my German Irish mom, Julia Madeline Gardner. But anyway, I have this wonderful name, but I'm also now very divorced and very broke and very sad. And it was just a terrible time in my life. And but I got a job on Wall Street, working for a Brundage Store and Rose Investment Counsel. May I help you? It was an investment counsel firm. And here's the great thing about what happened there. The man who was my boss, his name is Douglas Lane. That man was one of the first people to really help me when I left after 7 years to become an actress. He said, Julie, do what you need to do. And he actually gave our theater company money.
Wow.
And this man, to this day, he's been such a good friend to me. He was so good to my late husband when my late husband was very ill. And he is now my financial advisor. He's very good. And he is also one of my biggest patrons for my charity, the Pulmonary Fibrosis Foundation. So I met this man in 1981. It is now 2025. And this man and his wonderful wife, Gay Lane, are still in my life, and they mean the world to me. So, but I was a librarian. I was a
Yeah.
librarian. I
Wow.
had to work a day job because I was not making it as an actress. I was doing, oh, remember they had what showcases and readings and showcases, whatever, but I wasn't really doing much work. And I'd sort of get close to something, and I'd audition for the Long Wharf, and then they'd cast, I don't know, Laura Linney or something. And I was like, well, I can't compete with Laura Linney, you know.
No,
It was,
no, you need to carve your own lane, and you did.
yes, yes. But it was meeting Charles Busch that
Unbelievable.
really changed things for me. And then again, later on, meeting my late husband, Ralph Howard, who really helped also. When you have someone who loves you very much and believes in you so much, and he was the one, because even after I met my late husband, I was still I was definitely working more. I was the queen of off-Broadway, the off-Broadway queen, Charles Busch's muse.
Right.
But, off-Broadway doesn't really pay a lot of money.
No.
You know what I mean?
Although you get to work on a lot of new plays with great playwrights.
Yes, it was fantastic. And I
Yes.
was very happy, and I was meeting all these fantastic actors and whatnot. But, the rent,
Yes.
but
The Rent.
the rent, how about the rent?
Yes.
And, at that point too, luckily, I had taken some money out of my profit sharing from my Wall Street. So I was able to buy myself some nice clothes. But, now I'm like, in my early 30s, and I'm still but it was Ralph Howard who said to me, you need to stop worrying about the Con Ed bill and work on your work. The bills are paid. Okay. The 4 words that changed my whole life. I cannot tell you how grateful I am every day of my life. The bills are paid. So I married him, of course.
I mean, for other reasons as well, but that
No,
was
no,
a
no.
lovely
I
part of it.
in love. I happen to be in love. But really, it changed because he kept saying to me, you are talented. You are this. You need to work on your work.
Right.
Because I'm still, going, oh, well, the Con Ed, and well, oh, my Amex bill. I bought a Perry Ellis blouse. What am I going to do? How am I going to pay for it?
Right. Right.
And he just said, no, you got to do your work. So that really changed everything for me. And it allowed me to take my talent seriously. I'm just going to go do another side thing. I just
Do.
attended Linda Lavin's memorial service. One of the greatest actresses, could do it all. And one of the things that someone said is, Linda had a talent for her talent. She understood and nurtured her talent. And I was always so worried about so many other things. that I didn't have a talent for my talent. I couldn't work on my talent. And that's what so many artists, you know, they struggle so hard because they want to have a real life. You know, you want a shelter and food and maybe a family and whatnot, but bills must be paid. And the world at large may not necessarily go, oh, she's so talented. We'll be like the Medicis and we'll just, you know,
Right. We'll be her patron.
we'll
But
be
can I ask you something about that? I mean, A, your husband, what an angel. Like, what an angel person, and how lucky you both were to find each other.
yes.
The idea of talent for your talent, what what that also means is a willingness to say out loud, I think I have talent, right? I mean, a lot of us were raised, there are many ways we are raised. And in certain households, to imagine yourself special in some way
Oh,
or talented, or to believe that you have the right to take up that kind of space and ask people to watch you do your thing, even if you secretly think you do have talent or
right.
love it, um, to own it, to be confident. Tell me where that grew from in you. You know, Ralph might say, "Don't worry, I have a full-time job. It's a normal
Right.
kind of job, and I work in news, and
Right. Right.
I can pay the Con Ed, and I love you, and you're living here, and I'd be paying it anyway, right?"
Right. Right. Right.
So you're not like a kept woman. It's like, as part of our partnership, I got you. But
Right.
but that also meant you had to own it. Like, it's scary. Oh no, really? 100% this? Wait, did I say I was an actress? So can you talk to me about your evolution in that way, owning it?
First of all, I'm having the time of my life talking to you. And I love your questions. And I'm just,
Good.
it's great. Your
Same.
podcast is amazing.
Oh,
First of all, I developed a very special relationship with audiences. When you do comedy, let's face it, you get a reaction right away. They
right.
let
It's
you know
yes or
right away.
no.
Yes
Thumbs
or
up,
no.
thumbs down. Right.
And I figured out pretty quickly, hey, they're on my train. They're getting it. And I'm telling you, I'm not even sure sometimes what exactly I was doing that made the reaction, but
It
I
happened.
it happened and I could it really is a chemical thing. I
Mm,
was like, oh my goodness, this is incredible. And then I started working with people like Joe Mantello and Harriet Harris and people I admire and love and whatever. And listen, I remember Liza Minnelli coming to my act and just howling in the front row. And at one point, she actually called me and said, "Oh, my mother would have loved you." And I felt like saying, "Can we just talk about who your mother was?"
right.
My
Drop the
father
mic.
too. Jesus,
Yeah.
my father would have thought you were right. So all these little reactions started me thinking, "Hey, kid, you're on the right train. You're really
Mhm.
on the right train." But it was really, I think, that the audience,
Right.
it was interesting. I did a play, what, a year or so ago, um, and it was off Broadway. And I have to say, I'm gonna quote Jesse Green, but it made me realize, like, oh, that's kind of what I remembered from, like, when it started happening. Jesse Green said, Julie Halston, who is incapable of not connecting with an audience. I thought that was so interesting that he wrote that in his review. And it kind of thrilled me because I think that's what gave me the confidence to go, oh, kid, you gotta be on the stage. You gotta do this because this is the thing that can maybe bring joy to people,
Hmm.
And I kind of like the fact that listen, show business is, it's brutal, it's horrible. We could all talk about how dreadful it is. But when in its highest form, in a way, it's a service,
Yes.
a noble profession. And I like to think of myself as doing service to make people feel in any way we can, and particularly now in this political environment. So yeah, I mean, I think it was from the audience, but also then working with great people and I mean, I got to tell you, just working on Our Town recently, it's my favorite play in the world, and working with the cast that I just worked with, Jim Parsons as the stage manager. I mean, I could barely get through it every night. It
Mm,
moved me so.
yeah.
And yeah, I mean, look, we know, Alana, this is a crazy business where you go like, well, how did she get that? How did she get that? How did he get that? Why is he getting that? We can
All day, all
all
day.
day we could do that. It's like, oh, what's she doing these days? I mean, there's all that stuff. One of the great things I love about being older is I don't do that too much anymore.
Hmm.
I really don't. It's like I have to feed the cat. I have to do my laundry, and I have to figure out what I'm going to wear to the next premiere. I have no time to be going,
Very busy.
I'm
Right.
very busy.
Right. Well,
But
the compare and despair is an
oh,
exhausting conversation to have. When you showed up with Nathan Lane on Sex and the City, uh, the earth shifted, right? Like things happen every once in a while on an already an iconic show, but you guys created something iconic on the iconic. Um,
thank you.
and now you've been able to come back. Can you talk a little bit about that experience? Was that fun
First
or
of all,
stressful?
it's no, it, again, another person who changed my life, Michael Patrick King. He was always a fan of Charles Busch's work, and he would come to our shows. And I remember him many years ago saying, one of these days, Halston, one of these days. And
Yeah.
you just go, yeah, okay,
Yeah.
whatever. And one of these days happened. They said, hey, guess what? We've written a part for you. We think it's really cool. She's a society lady and she's going to marry Nathan Lane. And yes, he's gay and all this. And I have to tell you, I'm on that set. I've been on that set many times actually now. And of course, Jessica Parker is, I mean, she is the head, Carrie is the head in a sense. She and Michael. And John Melfi, these are the executive producers. It starts at the top. Classy, kind, hardworking, making sure everyone is taken care of. Why would that be terrible? Um, they treat me like a goddess. I am so grateful for Bitsy Von Muffling. I am stopped on the street quite a bit, and I was stopped in Istanbul.
A far reach.
Bitsy, Bitsy, Bitsy. I know I couldn't believe it. But again, the greats are great. Do you know
Hmm.
what I mean?
Hmm.
They're confident and hardworking and creative and smart, and they know how to be kind and good and do all the right things. It's a fun set. A lot of the crew are the same from Sex and the City on to and just like that. And it's just wonderful. It's wonderful, wonderful. And the fact that Bitsy married a gay man and knew he was gay, and they really loved each other, and he loved her, and she ended up pregnant for goodness sake. Um, it's
It's
all
incredible. It's
it's all
incredible.
incredible. And older women particularly really, really related to Bitsy. and still do. And I'm very grateful. I'm very grateful.
Well, I would also say that, you have done so so much theater, right? You have lived on a stage since Hofstra and
Yes.
basically have not left, regardless of where that stage is.
Right.
But there's something about that performance because you've also been in a lot of movies and a lot of television shows, but there is a whether Bitsy was on stage or on television, I feel like there's an effortlessness and a fun and a confidence that you bring to it. It
Oh,
doesn't feel like Julie Halston, now I'm on camera and I do
right,
something different, right? Like
right.
it's so alive and fun and silly and joyous and connected to a very real person at the same time. And I mean, I look at like your staggering resume that includes, we didn't even talk about what your relationship to singing is. I don't think you lead as feeling like I did a musical as a non-singer, right? Lucy was a very comedic role. And if you had
Yeah.
told me growing up, obsessed with musical theater, obsessed with cast recordings, that I would be originating a role on Broadway in a musical, I'd be like, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's cuckoo
That's
pants.
cuckoo for Cocoa
Yeah.
Puffs. But
Yeah.
sometimes roles come up where if you can sing well enough and make it funny, you can have a blast doing it. Do you walk into musicals any differently than you walk into plays?
Well, first of all, I remember your Lucy, and it was
And she
beyond
could not
adorable and
sing.
fabulous. It was. It was just fantastic.
Thank you.
And of course, you have so many interesting qualities. It's sort of that I've seen in a couple of pieces that I've seen you in, which is that wonderful, guileless, innocent girl who can also turn quickly,
Yeah,
which is a great combo. Um, I hate auditioning for musicals, and I don't generally audition for theater anymore. I haven't really in a long time.
I would hope so.
Yeah, no, I haven't, which is lovely. Thank you, my manager. Uh,
Yes,
uh, but even the idea of singing is just horrifying to me. Meanwhile, I've done like 6 Broadway shows where I sing.
huge, huge musicals.
It's
Yes,
crazy. Yeah, Gypsy,
yeah.
great musical of all.
Hairspray,
Hairspray. Yeah, crazy.
Tootsie.
I know. No, it's nuts. I did 3 weeks on the town and I played Madame Dilly and anything goes. And it was crazy. I had to learn how to do a tap number at the end. And no, it's just nuts. Here's how I approach every musical. And, when I get, I go to the first rehearsal and I always make friends with the choreographer and the musical director. First day,
Right away.
right
Cookies.
away, right away.
Who
And
likes muffins?
yes, exactly. Hello, my name is Julie Halston.
This is what I cannot do.
Exactly. And I'm like, here are the limitations. They are many, many. But what I have to say, and again, Broadway, the musical directors, the choreographers, and the dance captains, they've been so good to me and so patient. And what I've learned so much, again, is, modulation and whatnot. And also the ability to take those characters that I've been able to sort of, come up with and to sort of figure out how would they sing. Do you know what I
Mhm.
mean? And there's no shame when you're a character actress or even a character singer to, kind of do it in a way that, is sort of a character-y-ish, They're not expecting you to hit a high E,
Right.
you
Or
know?
even to know what that is.
Exactly. Hello. Hello. So, and also when like, for example, when I was doing Tootsie and I had that number, I like what she's doing. I could sing it, I could talk it, I could move around.
Just
And then
live
of
it.
course I had this wonderful ensemble. And then when I had to do Baltimore Crabs as Velma, because I also did Velma as well as the female authority figure, that was a crazy story, Alana. Margot Lyon, oh my, I miss Margot very much. Margot Lyon she liked me. She just thought I was funny and she liked me. And she didn't she didn't like a lot of the women who were playing Velma von Tussle. She was like, oh, I'm gonna get rid of that one after 3 months. I'm gonna get she just I don't know. Anyway, she decided that Julie should play Velma von Tussle and the female authority figure. I was like, well, that's going to be very impossible because sometimes they're on stage, very
Same
neat.
scene.
Yeah, same scene. It's not going to work, Margot. And she said, no, no, no. You'll do like the matinee, and then you'll do
Oh, wow. You're doing
oh,
rep with yourself.
rap with myself, darling.
Yeah.
And again, you learn how to be a master class. So and these casts are so amazing, and dance captains, these people are so talented. And I would
Unbelievable.
go to them for help. And that's what I would say to young actors and whatnot. Go to people that can help you.
Yeah.
And I used to, on my lunch hours, sometimes I wouldn't take a break. I'd ask the musical director, can we figure out a time that I
Yeah.
can work with you on this? And I got to tell you, it helps. It works. And just learning how to, how to move. There are so many people that just have such natural, physical skills. I have very little.
Mm.
But boy, I learned. I learned. And Alana, let's talk about willfulness. I'm very willful. I have will.
Mm.
I think it comes from my parents in some ways. My dad was a pretty willful guy. I'm half Sicilian.
Yeah.
And very hardworking, worked 6 days a week. And I had a will. I had to do it. I had to do it. And I
Did your parents, I'm going to tear up just you talking about your dad. Did they, you talk about your mom's love for theater, and I know she lived a very long life and into her 90s, right?
She was 93. Boy, you do your work.
Yes.
The
So
93, and she came to all my shows, and my parents came to all my shows. Um,
what was their relationship to your success?
well, I found this out. Um, when I did a one-woman show in the early 90s called Julie Halston's Lifetime of Comedy. And that's what kind of set me on a very interesting path of doing my one-woman shows and whatnot. And
Amazing.
my father, I found this out afterwards, he literally would stand up before the show would start and he'd open up the program and he'd say, oh, that's my daughter. You're going to be seeing my daughter. And,
Oh my God.
like they would come to, like Gypsy and, oh, the biggest night of my mother's life. She came to Gypsy. She met Bernadette Peters and she, she was very teary opening night. But
Right.
they also came to the opening night party. And Maggie Smith was there, Sam Mendes, Kate Winslet. No, she was
See.
very happy to meet them all. Very happy. My
Yeah.
father loved meeting Bernadette Peters.
Yes.
He also knew that she was Italian and all this kind of stuff. Um, Tom Hanks was there, and he came running over to me, and he said, "Oh my God, you were so..." And he actually, I think he said the F word, and he was said, "You were so freaking funny." And he said, "Oh, I'm sorry." And my mother said,
Yeah.
I love it. You're talking about my daughter. She's hysterical. I know. I love it. And then I introduced her to Tom Hanks, and she was so excited because she loves Tom Hanks. And at that point, it was like, I don't know, 1 o'clock in the morning. And she said, Rudy, we're leaving. We saw Julie. It was the best in the world. And I met Tom Hanks. We're going home now. And that was it.
That's it. What else do you need? By the way, she's 100% correct. 100% correct. All right. As we come to a close, I have to ask you to promise me that you will come back on because we've scratched the surface of your beautiful life.
No, and you know what? You ask so many great questions. I see why your podcast is so popular, but also it's fun for us to
I'm
talk to you
glad.
about all these things. And it's so fun to be able to, because, to look back and look forward, we don't do that too often. And to be able to articulate it with someone that you trust and knows what you're talking about because she's done it herself. It's very moving. It really is. It's really, really moving. But we've scratched the surface.
We've scratched the surface.
Yeah.
Number one, before we get back to your little known fact, first of all, everyone, COVID was a funny time. Award shows still happened. Recipients filmed their speeches, which allowed for you could probably tape it as many times as you wanted,
Right.
which is great. It's a self-tape for an award ceremony.
Right.
But I do want you to just tell people where they can learn more about your organization, so that they can A, be educated, and B, donate money. So how do they find out more?
All they need to do is go to pulmonaryfibrosis.org.
Okay.
And the name of this organization that I am on the board of and that I fundraise for is the Pulmonary Fibrosis Foundation. And it's maybe a disease that people are not aware of, but a lot of people have it. And it's very, very, it is a fatal disease, although we're making some big strides, and we're actually coming up with a lot of help, and there are medications that actually slow the progression of the disease down. But pulmonaryfibrosis.org, the name of the organization is Pulmonary Fibrosis Foundation. And my husband was Ralph Howard. He was the anchorman for 10/10 Wins. And then he also worked for Howard Stern. Some of you may know of this and some of you may not. But anyway, that's how I got involved with it. So that's that. And then when I did have my web series, which Jim Caruso from Birdland really made me do, he was the one who said, we should do a web series. I was like, oh, please, I just want to have another glass of wine.
Exactly.
And I need to be home and I need to dye my hair. He said, no, we're going to do this. And I said, oh, really? Yes, we're going to call people and we're going to get guests and we're going to do things. We're going to talk about.
You can finally be a demented talk show host.
Yes, I
Finally.
could. Finally. And it became a real hit, but he said, we'll ask people for tips and we'll donate to the PFF, the Pulmonary Fibrosis Foundation. I didn't even know this. And
Right.
it was fantastic. And we were able to donate thousands of dollars to them.
Incredible, incredible, incredible. Okay, before I let you go, is there a little known fact about Julie Halston that you can share?
Yes. A lot of people don't know this, but I actually am a very big sports fan. I actually go to a lot of Yankee games. I know a lot about the Yankees. I used to be a Mets fan. My mother, to this day, I mean, I'm sure
From above.
they never forgave me for going over to the Yankees. I'm also a huge basketball fan. And we go to and I have a new man in my life who's been wonderful, and his name is Robert Charles. I just wanted to sort of give him a shout out. And we go to a lot of the Liberty games, and I love women's basketball. I love, the NBA. I'm very excited that the Knicks took over for the Celtics and they're winning. So a lot of people don't know that I'm really a big sports fan, and I like to go to sports events.
I did not know. I did not know.
That's little
I represent the masses in that way. Well, now we do. We will see you in every stadium. Maybe there's a Julie Halston sings the national anthem. That would be fantastic. You could speak it. Oh,
I would have to speak it.
Can you see?
In my New York accent.
I feel like you could do it. All right. Thank you. Thank you. I will see you soon. And truly, thank you for being on the podcast today. It has been just something I've been looking forward to for a really long time. So thank you.
You're a total joy, darling. And I'm thrilled, and more to come.
More to come. Okay. Mwah. Bye, sweetheart. Have a great day. Bye.
Thank you. You too.
Bye.